morning and good afternoon. I am so excited to welcome you all to M13's Future Perfect series. I will be your moderator for today's Future Perfect, the future of influence. It has been my pleasure to moderate this series. My name is Sarah Tomolonius and I head investor relations at M13. Our mission at M13 is to identify, understand, and invest in the core technologies that will drive and change consumer behavior over the next decade. Simply put, we invest in the future of consumer behavior. When we started the Future Perfect series last year, our goal was to support our community with connection and conversation about topics that intrigue us and that we believe warrant a deeper level of dialogue and consideration. Today, through a series of short and impactful conversations, we will hear voices from around the M13 community, from investors to founders and partners discussing the topic of influence. How do investors, board members, and founding teams catalyze consumer behavior changes and opportunities through influence? And what are the most effective ways to leverage influence, individual charisma, storytelling, campaigns, in order to build trust, credibility, and impact? Those are just some of the questions we'll begin to unpack today, and I am delighted at the august lineup we have, speakers whom we are grateful and delighted to say are friends of M13 and part of our constellation of incredible people. That includes you in our audience, of course. Investors are an important part of the entrepreneurship ecosystem with connections and best practices, but also with executive leadership that can help fill in the blanks in pivotal moments for early stage startups. The impact can be profound, leading directly to better execution and decision-making, as well as faster exits. This is the thesis behind M13's venture engine. First up today are my colleagues, M13 partners Karl Alomar and Rob Olson, who will discuss Rob's research on executive leadership. They are joined by Bunch CEO and co-founder Darja Gutnick. We are proud that Bunch is an M13 portfolio company, and Darja will share her perspective as a founder on the modern founder-investor relationship. Welcome to all of our panelists.
Hi everyone, I'm Karl Alomar, managing partner at M13. Welcome, and I have a couple of great guests on this video to join me. So let me first introduce Darja Gutnick, who actually is CEO and founder of a company named Bunch.ai. Bunch is an AI leadership coach that makes it easy to learn and grow with your morning coffee. And is a really incredible platform that we invested in a couple of years ago and has been a great founder in our portfolio. Rob is one of the partners in the firm. He actually runs data strategy, has an incredible background, actually was at DigitalOcean with me for years, built the whole data operation there, and works very closely with a lot of our founders and a lot of our portfolio companies in helping them really structure and understand their data. So welcome guys, nice to have you on board. I think the goal of today's conversation is really to run through an analysis that Rob led, which is really centered around how executive expertise really supports and helps companies as they grow, and some statistics to support that. And Darja, being kind of in the business of helping leaders become great leaders, would love to just have your thoughts and anecdotes and examples of how support and experience has really kind of helped you in your journey to date, and how you see that as a benefit in terms of developing leadership across businesses within the industry. So Rob, I guess just start with you. Would love to just understand, why this paper? Why did you even think about looking at this data and beginning to analyze, the problem set?
Yeah, for sure. It was very interesting because obviously when I joined M13 and when M13 was sort of formed, we had this hypothesis that we think founding teams really can execute faster with a higher degree of success if they're able to take advantage of relevant expertise. That's why the firm is structured the way that it is. And so it was designed really to make sure that they can get experienced leaders or executives that they wouldn't otherwise really have the money to hire or the time to really onboard, manage, and have a full-time relationship with. So we had this question, is there any data out there that could help back up this claim? Is there any structured data? The answer is really no. when you look at the problem set of understanding the human beings who are behind successful startups that become successfully exited businesses, that data is out there, is publicly available, but it's not structured or really collected in a way that is easy to analyze. And so in order to do that, what we did was we set out and said, okay, let's look at over 800 executives at more than 200 companies that reached a sizable exit, greater than $500 million in exit valuation via an IPO or an M&A in the US, basically over the last 15 years. And what we looked at were really companies that fit into the kind of exit trajectory and model that we invest in. So we excluded some biotech and life sciences companies, which follow different trajectories in terms of when they're acquired. So we focused on consumer tech and B2B tech, any traditional tech IPOs. We can go into the findings now. I can ruin the surprise, or we can sort of talk about.
No, let's tease it out. Let's tease it out a little bit. I'd love to throw you in here, Darja. You've built a business around the idea that strong leadership and developing skills, which obviously happens over time, really drives to greater success in the workplace. I mean, what were your thoughts on kind of this thesis, and have you any ideas around how you're trying to contribute into the whole idea of building experience or building capabilities from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me, of course, and super excited to hear the results of the story and your take on it, Rob. We are pretty much in the same mission, right? I think as M13 Bunch is also really inspired by the idea of what would happen to the world if we actually don't fail businesses and we don't actually kind of get stuck on the way, but we actually resolve problems really effectively and we collaborate effectively and really make innovation come to life. And leadership obviously plays a huge role, because I think next to timing to market, that's like the second reason. So team issues, team ineffectiveness, any type of kind of negative consequences of failing leadership are usually the responsible factors for startups not working out or innovation not actually coming to fruition. So we are really standing behind our mission to actually enable everyone that is signing up to lead and wants to either build a business, build a team, help products come to life, to be able to do so. And I think the core idea behind the way I think we interpret leadership is that leadership means that you can impact yourself and others in a positive way, and that it's also a behavioral set more than a personality type of characteristic. So you don't actually have to be born a great leader, but you have to show up, you have to do the work, and you have to put in the work on a daily basis to really make progress. And I think it actually ties very nicely and is complementary to what M13 is kind of positioning with the idea of, well, if you don't have the time to actually kind of learn it all on your own, and that the 1% better every day is actually not going to get you there fast enough, you can absolutely partner with great experienced leaders in specific areas that actually can bring you that knowledge. And I think from a personal point of view, and I have many anecdotes there, but I'm going to hold them back for now, but I definitely would agree that it is extremely helpful. And I do think you need to do both as a business leader, and especially as an early founder. You never have enough expertise, I don't think, because you wear too many hats. And so collaborating with experienced leaders is very useful and beneficial. But at the same time, you do need to put your own work, and you need to make your own progress as well. And the 1% a day is kind of a mandatory must-have criteria to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always learning, we're always growing. I think one of the greatest learnings of my life in developing as a leader is the idea that you never stop learning. And so putting that effort in and putting that education in is definitely valuable. I think an interesting other aspect of it is we no matter how good you are as a founder, and Darja, you're a great founder, so you could be a great example for this, but I definitely found this in my career. There is always going to be blind spots in the early days of business. There are always a lack of resources, which don't necessarily allow you to have the right intelligence at the table for a particular problem set. And I've definitely found myself over the years lose a significant amount of time spinning around simple issues, simple for some people, but complex for people that just don't have the experience and haven't had the knowledge. And that's really part of the ethos and the premise by which we built M13 and built the whole propulsion platform. So, I mean, Darja, I know you, let me tease one anecdote out of you, but what we've tried to do, and I know, very personally the relationship we've had, but what we've tried to do is really support you in times when you have hit a problem which, even though you have a fantastic team, may have a gap or may have a blind spot and just kind of want to lean on expertise to help solve. Do you have any anecdotes or any kind of examples of perhaps where that's happened and where we've been helpful in that regard?
Absolutely. I think I actually have two that tie nicely together. And the first one goes into the very, very beginning of my journey with M13, but moreover with you, Karl, of course. I think we've had the session on while you were still a DO, I think, actually, when we really just stood in front of a whiteboard. I had so many strategic loose ends, and I was kind of trying to bring it all together. How does the GTM align with the actual product strategy? And it was hard for me, I remember, to zoom out because I was so caught up in the details, and I was thinking so deeply for too long time about it probably at this point in time. And I think you came in and you kind of really helped me structure and zoom out, and it really turned the company around and led to us actually working together when you joined M13, and became a really true partnership between both companies. And the second example is actually a very important one, and is a very authentic one, and I think showcases how impactful such a partnership can be. We just recently actually have kind of graduated our product from an MVP that grew very quickly. We went from a couple of hundred users to a few thousand in like less than 3 months, I think. And of course, overall, this poses risks, but also drains kind of the technological setup in the system. And I think in this case, it came in very handy that as a former COO, you of course had so much experience around scaling technology, how to actually address tech debt, and how to really roadmap change and kind of where to look out for. And I think in that sense, it was really crucial for us as a founding team to have that guidance and not to just, jump on like solution ideas that we kind of code ourselves out with, and instead, again, taking a strategic view and really roadmap change for the company and solidify the infrastructure and the architecture that we are building towards. So that was extremely, like, on a personal level, very useful and helpful, but I think for the business, it was extremely valuable.
Well, I definitely appreciate the recognition. That's very kind of you. I don't want this to feel like a self-beneficial interview that we're doing, but I do appreciate that, and I think it
did really help.
Yeah, it definitely resonates across the firm. It's something that we do, all our partners do with multiple different founders. I think that leads me, Rob, to kind of the next little component of the plan, and maybe I'll just ask you about, the baselines. I know that there are two key things that you were looking at, length, time to exit, as well as, size of exit. And maybe you can talk to what the industry standards were and what you were seeing as a traditional trajectory, and Sure. Then how perhaps that related to the level of expertise or level of experience that lived within the team.
Yeah, very relevant to what you were just saying. If we're going to help early teams see around corners, we're trying to help them save time. And we know that time is ultimately one of the key variables to how well an investment performs and how well a company performs. Time is money. And so one of the first things we did when we gathered, we manually compiled from publicly available data sources on the internet, but, had to compile this data set of 800 executives. It was really validate sort of this sort of industry-wide held notion that the average successful exit usually takes 7 to 8 years. And we actually saw precisely that. In the data that we collected, we measured it based on our manually constructed data set, and we validated that it's exactly what we saw. And so when we started to actually then segment out, okay, we compiled dozens of different characteristics on the individual leaders who were part of these companies at different points in time as that company progressed from startup to successfully exited company. And so we know who joined, when they joined, and what their experience was prior to joining. And so we can attach variables like, had they had a prior leadership role in the same field at a separate company. And so we started to be able to slice the data that way. And what we saw was, our first big finding was really that startups that have multiple founders, so 2 or more people who were there at the beginning, who have some sort of prior leadership role or executive experience, those companies actually exit 33% faster. And so instead of the traditional average that we saw of 7 to 8 years, we were seeing 4.7 years for those companies.
That's amazing. And as you said, you know, time is money. So that does probably relate to the amount that they raised and kind of the IRR ultimately that results for the you know, early investors in these businesses. Perhaps you can elaborate a little further and share some of the findings around IRR and around
yes.
You know, volume of funds raised.
So the second big variable, obviously, in how well an investment performs is how much money you had to put into it, right? And so if we're helping companies exit faster, we theoretically should help them also need to raise less capital. And so we looked at both the amount of capital raised and the size of exit. And similarly, what we saw was for companies that had greater than 1, so 2 or more founders with prior leadership and executive experience in their field, they raised 34% less capital than other companies, than the companies that didn't have that experience at the table early on. And so you combine those 2 things together, 33% faster and 34% less capital. If you look at an average scenario where a company achieves a $500 million exit, let's say, the theoretical IRR for a Series A lead investor who's investing, let's say, $10 million for 15% starting ownership, and you progress that through time, that total IRR actually improves by 81%. And so you're nearly doubling your rate of return simply by making sure the founding team at that seed and A stage, you know, has the access to relevant leadership experience around the table to help them see around corners and just progress up the J curve that much faster and be able to avoid some of the common pitfalls that may fall outside of the founding team's areas of expertise and where they might traditionally spend a lot of cycles and a lot of, you know, energy and resources and diverting that away from their core competencies and the main value proposition for their product.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, you know, we see it ourselves as companies are able to achieve, you know, better results, faster results, valuations go up, the amount raised early goes up. But as a result, the overall amount raised, because the, you know, less rounds need to be done. I know at DigitalOcean, we only really did 3 formal rounds of investment that really got us to kind of a critical growth phase. You know, a lot of companies out there will do plenty more than that, but I think that, you know, partly luck, partly experience, I guess, but we really, you know, had navigated how to manage our capital effectively, how to get through problems effectively, and you know, get to a really good outcome as a result. So Darja, just in terms of, you know, talking about investors and kind of, you know, taking advantage of knowledge like this as a CEO, how do you think about the benefits that an investor can provide outside of pure capital that, again, could, you know, could result in, maybe I'm leading the witness here, but could result in, you know, these potential outcomes where you do have, you know, faster road to market, faster, you know, less requirements for funding in the future, etc.
Yeah, maybe actually before I address this point, I just wanted to share one more thought, kind of following up on the results, because first of all, I think it's a tremendously valuable study, and it is so great to see that we kind of are actually having data on this point. In our current environment, where I think we're all also very kind of driven and motivated by giving more and more access to like a wide and diverse pool of founders that may or may not have prior experience. Given that data, as an investor, I would now basically conclude, like, I either have founders that have prior experience to increase the chances of success and to reduce time, or I make sure that these founders do have that expertise in order to kind of find the same shortcut. So I think it just plays into that same argument that it actually is even more important to team up with experienced and expertise-driven leadership if you want to actually fund diverse pool of founders that may or may not have that. But on your question, or to your question, Karl, I mean, obviously the number one kind of benefit is this like looking around corners. And I think it actually stuck with me for a little bit when you mentioned it for the first time. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept actually. And I think it comes back to like experience blueprints or almost templates. So being in the business day to day and kind of grinding away at it, right? And building and building and building, you have all the data. You have data every day. Things change all around you with your users and customers, with your people on the team, in the market. And oftentimes the challenge for a founder or for a CEO in particular is to understand what is actual signal, like what do I need to pay attention to at any given moment in time? And I think when you work and collaborate with people that have been in it for a few years, they bring relevant frameworks and blueprints to the table and help you to look at that data from a particular perspective. You don't have to take that perspective, but just looking through it and being able to like see it from different points of view has made it possible for me to make decisions quicker because I've been kind of simulating scenarios in my head. And with that sparring, I'm able to do that better. I think on just also a founder level, and I think that doesn't get talked enough about, is the emotional journey of building a business is a very taxing one. As we all know, it's a very challenging it's a very rewarding and challenging kind of journey. So having partners in crime or in building is definitely also very important. And I think if you actually can build a trustful relationship with your investors and really look at them as advisors, that always helps me. Like my mental model is these are my advisors. Of course, we have a common goal and we're a team, but in the end, some of these people at least are very experienced and have a perspective that I value and I need in order to make better decisions. So it's kind of this like council, like my advisory council type of framework that I use, at least in my mind. And I think that's just very helpful for making better decisions. And there's tons of other benefits as well, but these two would be the most important ones for me, I think. And of course, introductions to like networks and contacts that you already have and have met and I haven't yet. And that like the opening doors is always extremely helpful. But I think this is something that we can like hustle through as founders in the end. I actually don't think that's the biggest value add. It's really the perspective and like the mental capability to help make better decisions in my mind.
Yeah, that's definitely the thesis by which we built the firm. And hopefully it feels like we're pulling through and helping you, at that level. And so hopefully that, that keeps you very engaged with how we're approaching this problem set. But I know we have a great partnership.
Definitely.
I know you work with a number of the members of the team on a number of different problems. But I totally agree. I mean, having been a founder myself, definitely, very much looking for a partnership rather than just an investment. And so that's really what we've strove to build here. We are running tight on time, so just maybe to wrap things up, I'd love to understand, Rob, if you have kind of the next step plan. Where does this go? What do you think the follow-up to this analysis will be as you go into the future?
Yeah, there are so many ways to further this analysis. I mean, at the end of the day, we're analyzing human beings, right? And human beings don't fit nicely into sort of quantitative metrics, most of the time. And so when we're trying to gather and understand the key variables that contribute to founder success, the list is just infinite. And so when we think about trying to go a step further, we would love to actually engage more deeply with some of these successful companies and do deeper, surveying and information to understand some of the different attributes around the life experiences and the different professional experiences that have played a part in sort of creating some of these leaders and contributing to how they are successful at the companies that then we're looking at because they are successful. And so, one layer deeper is really to try and go from what's publicly available to engaging and trying to get a deeper, more granular understanding of people's experience.
And just to be clear, just so people understand the realm of analysis, we're talking about companies like Spotify, Zoom, Uber, Peloton, pretty well-known household names in terms of tech businesses. And so it's interesting to kind of look at their past and see what brought them to where they are today. Well, with that being said, we are out of time. I want to thank Rob and Darja. Very kind of you guys to join. This is a great conversation. I think we could go on for another hour talking about this, but for now we are out of time. So thank you very much, and look forward to continuing to work with you, Darja, and obviously Rob as one of our partners to work alongside you. Thank you.
Same. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karl, Rob, and Darja. Two quick takeaways I wanted to highlight. Karl, you said that M13 is in the business of helping leaders become great leaders. And Darja, you noted that someone doesn't have to be born a great leader, but you do have to show up and put in the work on a daily basis. At M13, we're all about accelerating the journey through the J-curve to mitigate time and capital risk and drive value to those early stage consumer tech companies by working daily hand in hand with founders to help them accelerate faster. We are fortunate to hear now from the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez. During the lockdown phase of the pandemic, Miami got a lot of buzz due to the noticeable influx of Silicon Valley's tech and investment community. While it seemed to have come out of nowhere and fast, the mayor says the Miami movement has been 10 years in the making. And yet, in the midst of great and exciting growth, the city is also dealing with the devastating tragedy of the Surfside condo collapse, a painful chapter that we hope will continue to foster our greater awareness of everyone's responsibilities to keeping our communities safe. Here is the Honorable Mayor Francis Suarez on his reflections on the unstoppable Miami movement.
Hi everyone, this is City of Miami Mayor Francis Suarez. I want to start off by saying thank you to the entire M13 team for inviting me to be here today, and I wanted to especially thank Carter and Courtney, who have been great friends to our city in Miami. As we just saw from the Bitcoin 2021 conference a few months ago, the appetite for a robust tech and cryptocurrency sector here in Miami is ravenous. Miamians have been building towards this critical mass for over a decade, and my team and I have been working tirelessly over the last 6 months to create a deeply rooted and diversified economy that will last a generation. We brought in some of the biggest names from the finance world, announced some of the most exciting startups, and attracted some of the biggest whales in crypto, all to Miami. But we can't build the city of tomorrow on hype alone. In order to create a truly sustainable technological sector, we need to invest in the infrastructure that surrounds it. Effective transportation, affordable housing, and an established talent pipeline are all critical pieces of the puzzle. If you look at where the conversation surrounding transportation was before I started pushing tech, it was stagnant and it was stale. The only ideas were how we expand access to our existing metro lines, and the most innovative ideas was using electric scooters to help bridge the last mile. It took less than 2 months for the Miami movement to pique the interest of Elon Musk and the Boring Company. Expanding affordable housing is necessary for enhancing, protecting, and preserving the neighborhoods that make Miami the most diverse and dynamic city in America. And through public-private partnerships, we've managed to turn $10 million of public investment into $200 million of shovel-ready projects in 2021 alone. And what will potentially be the most important facet of Miami's long-term success is investing in and bolstering our educational institutions, and not just our universities. Between initiatives like SoftBank's Data Science for All and the Summer Coding Bootcamp at iTech Prep, sponsored by the How Can I Help campaign, there are dozens of job training programs and upskilling programs that will play a huge role in developing our talent pipeline for tomorrow's economy. With our outlook towards the future, it's important to keep in mind what we're building towards. All the excitement around the Miami movement has been incredible, but what people are now starting to see has been a decade in the making. It's not about what achievements or announcements we can make today. It's about the achievements and announcements we can make in another decade from now. Thank you all again for having me, and God bless.
Thank you, Mayor Suarez, on the exciting minds coming together and collaborating around the sustainability, or a sustainability city of tomorrow, a city that welcomes and fosters diversity in community. Here at M13, one of our core values is community. We believe in building lasting relationships that enhance the diversity, health, and impact of our broad ecosystem. We are, of course, unique individuals, but a foundational pillar of M13 is that we are greater than the sum of our parts. or in our parlance, we are always brighter together. And that also applies to your boards. I am very pleased to introduce my colleague, M13 partner Matt Hoffman, who is joining in this next session, who is joined in this next session by startup CEO, author and Return Path and Bolster founder Matt Blumberg, and Fable founder Padma Warrior. Padma sits on the boards of Microsoft and Spotify, and we are very proud to partner with her at M13 in Fable. Our panelists will discuss the impact of boards with purpose. Over to you all.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I am thrilled to be here with two of my favorite human beings, Matt and Padma. So many of us recognize the value of effective leadership teams towards driving company success. Darja and Karl and Rob talked about it. It's something that more and more companies are kind of taking for granted, but it's equally important to appreciate the power that boards can have in the ultimate outcome of a business, right? In many cases, we've all read the stories. The relationship between a founder and a board can be the difference maker between a company's, can be the difference maker for a company's trajectory and overall story and outcome. At M13, we sit on over 15 boards across our portfolio. We're always trying to be the most value-added board member and investor we can be. And so I'm especially thrilled to have these two experts joining us today. I will give you their quick bios and then we'll hear from them because they have so much interesting things to say in our session. So Padma Warrior is the founder and CEO of Fable. Fable's mission is to be the world's best mobile service for curated reading, where people can share in private groups and creators can self-publish. Padma is the former CTO of Cisco and Motorola. She's a current board member of Microsoft and Spotify, former board member of Box and the Gap. So incredibly relevant experience to bear on the discussion today. And Matt, who's a founder and CEO of Bolster. Bolster is an on-demand executive talent marketplace connecting companies with experienced, vetted executives for interim, fractional, advisory, project-based, or board roles. He's a former CEO and founder of Return Path, where I was lucky to work with and learn most of what I know from him. He is the author of Startup CEO, Startup CXO, and coming out this fall, Startup Boards. He's a founder and board chair of Path Forward, and he served on over a dozen corporate and nonprofit and community boards. So couldn't be more thrilled to have this incredible panel with us, and we'll get right to it from there. So Padma, I'd love to start with you, your experience both on both sides of the table. In your experience, what makes a good board member? What are the characteristics of the type of person that makes an effective board member from what you've seen and experienced?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and great to meet you, my fellow panelists, and look forward to your insights as well. I think from my experience, people often confuse a good operator, what it means to be a good operator, and what it means to be a good board member. I think being a good operator is necessary to be, in my opinion, be an effective board member, but the roles are very, very different. As a good board member, your responsibility is to coach the leadership team, the management team, to challenge them and to really help them think about things that perhaps they don't think of every day, bringing your experience to the forefront, right? So primarily your role as a board member is understand the business deeply, and then help them think about things that are not perhaps in their linear way of thinking about the business. So you bring in that outside in perspective and occasionally challenge them in their thinking and encourage them to think beyond what perhaps, when you're running a company as an operator, you're sort of like in the business every single day. As a board member, you're there frequently, but not every single day. So you have the advantage of bringing in the outside in perspective. Oftentimes the mistake I see rookie board members, including myself, by the way, when I first joined the board, I made this mistake. You think you're there to run the company and you're not. That is a big distinction. It is especially hard if you're currently in an operating role like I am, because my day job is to build Fable, run Fable, and previously Neo, and before that at Cisco. But when I'm at the Microsoft board meeting, I'm not running Microsoft. I'm not running Spotify. That leadership team is doing it. You're not there necessarily to solve problems. You're just there to see if they're taking the right approach to solve the problems. And then, of course, there's fiduciary responsibilities like compliance, making sure things are being done with integrity, the values of the company and your values are not in conflict. I think these are some things that are very critical. And I would say really differentiate the role between you being a good operator and you being a good board member.
That's fantastic. And Matt, we know that leadership is not just an individual exercise, but it's a team exercise. So when you think about good boards as a team, as a unit, what are the characteristics of an effective board as a whole from your experience?
Yeah, well, first, Matt, it's good to see you. Thanks for inviting me. Padma, it's nice to meet you and honored to be on a panel with you. I was just taking notes while you were speaking. I think you just said 5 or 6 phenomenal things in your first couple of minutes. But, you know, it's interesting. CEOs frequently think about their leadership team as their team. And the reality is when you're a CEO, you have 2 teams. You have your leadership team and your board. And I always encourage CEOs that I mentor, or any of our clients, to really think about their board as a team and think about developing it the same way you think about developing your leadership team. So that speaks to how you construct it, who's on it, and then how you manage it and lead it as the leader of your board. And even if you're not technically the chairman, right, you are kind of the leader of the board when you're a founder and CEO, because you're the leader of the overall organization. So, you know, to build an effective team, you have to treat it like a team. You have to think about who you're putting on it, make sure you have people with complementary backgrounds, diverse experiences, diverse skill sets, and you know, almost think about it, you know, think about it like a puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, what's the piece that's missing anytime you think about expanding the board or adding a director? But as a CEO, you know, in terms of turning your board into an effective team, if you think about the kinds of things you would do with your leadership team to make them effective, you are probably doing things like offsites once in a while. You're probably having some social time. And COVID has definitely scrambled everything up for people, but there are still ways to have social time with teams. And you should be doing all of those things with your board as well, even though it's going to be smaller amounts of time because you're talking about senior executives that are busy and are not full-time working with you. But you know, I never have a board meeting that doesn't have at least a little bit of social time attached to it, even if it's, hey, the board gets on Zoom 30 minutes before everybody else joins. And we just talk about what's going on in our lives, or we synchronize it so everyone gets a DoorDash delivered to their house at the same time. Or, you know, we make everyone pull out their phones and show a picture to everybody else that they've taken in the last month and talk about something going on in their life. You have to sort of cultivate that teamness with your board and get them working together well as a team so that they can best serve you and the business and your leadership team.
That's great. And I'd love to, we'll go back to you, Padma. I'd love your perspective on this, Matt, because I know you've done some thoughtful work around it. When you think about a founder needing a board, obviously there's investor components, but there's also independent components. So when you think about why a founder even would want a board and why they would want a board beyond their investor requirements and when it's time to bring in an independent member, I'd love kind of your perspective, Padma, having done this first. When should a founder think about building out a team with independent members? Are some of the things they think about different early, late stage, pre-IPO versus a public company? What are some things that the founders in our portfolio should be thinking about as it comes to kind of building out this independent team?
Yeah, I mean, I would say every company is different, right? If you set aside the regulations, which when you're thinking of going public, a public company is required to have certain ingredients in the board. And so you have to meet that. You need an audit committee and, you know, there needs to be independence in the board. So if you're late stage and getting ready to go public, you know, of course, there are certain boxes you have to check, and that pretty much dictates, I would say, to a large extent, who you would select as your independent board members. You're looking to build an independent audit committee. You need somebody who's a finance executive or has real domain expertise in that, and so those are required by SEC, and you would of course comply with that. At an earlier stage, I would say, you know, in my company is very early stage right now, you have to really ask yourself, what do you want from that board? And can you get that without having a formal board? What you really need at earlier stages in companies, people that will advise you and you could use as sounding board. And that could range from I'm struggling to figure out how to build my company with everyone being remote. How do I bring together teams in a virtual environment, all the way to my international strategy. What should I think about? How should I think about my growth strategy? So I think there are very specific things as a founder you are going to need help with. That's sort of what I use you guys at M13 for, and Gutnick, Carter have been very gracious with their time, and Matt, yourself too. Like, I reach out to you and say, hey, I'm thinking of recruiting and I'm just looking at this kind of a talent. What do you think? And whether you're on my board or not, I think that's a kind of help you need. Whether it's investors or independent board members. So I would say in earlier stages, a board member, again, I'm combining investors as well as independent board members in the earlier stages, is more, I think, has much more of a role of being a sounding board and advisor rather than looking for governance. At a later stage, a board member has very specific fiduciary responsibilities to the stakeholders, right? Rather than even the management team. You're there to represent the shareholders. And so you're sort of like there to make sure things are being done properly and the governance is in order. Whereas earlier stage, you're there really to be a sounding board as an advisor to help the company grow, remove barriers for them, help them bring in talent, help them with recruiting, making sure they're building the right culture. Because founders at earlier stages, I would say early to mid stage, have a lot on their plate. And they're just like constantly trying to, and I think the big difference, by the way, this is a topic for another time, because I get asked a lot of time, what's the difference between being a senior executive in a large company and being a founder? Which is harder? What are the differences? I think the board member's role too, because a startup is very different from a bigger company. Board members need to understand founders typically don't have a lot of resources. So when you ask them questions, they have to do the work to get you the answers as well. So I think being careful what questions are asked, being a sounding board, I think those are the things I look for when I'm looking to put together a board at an earlier stage. In a later stage, the board members have I think first and foremost, the responsibility to understand the business, right? So you have to invest, I'm on the board of Microsoft, very complex, very large company with so many things that they're in. I've spent my time and show interest in learning the company. And what the management team, Microsoft executives in this case, have to do is take the time to educate me on certain aspects of the business. And I have to take the time to learn that business. So I would say it's very, very different things. And what I look for at this stage, whether it's seed stage, I would say all the way to level, is who can help me, who will be good sounding boards, who has expertise in the business I'm trying to build, who has a network that can connect me to other people, who has the network to influence my recruiting strategy. Those are the types of things that are more important to founders.
That's great. Matt, how do you see a board kind of adding value following on that? And then how do you build out and recruit both independent, and what are things you look for in building those boards?
Yeah, I think, Padma's right. An early stage board and a large public board do very different things, and you need different kinds of people on them for sure. My rule of thumb around early stage boards is what I call sort of the rule of ones. And that is, I believe startups should have independent directors on their board from day one. I think they do add a lot of value. I think you have to pick them carefully, obviously, and you have to make sure that you're not tying yourself into them for 4 years or 5 years. Like, what you need in year 1 and 2 of a startup might be very different than what you need in year 3 or 4. There's nothing wrong with a 1-year option grant or a 2-year option grant. So in my rule of ones, the first is independence from day one. And then the other ones that make up the rule are that I think startup boards should have one founder, one member of the management team on them, and then one independent for every one investor. So I've always run my boards that way, and really believe that the balance of investor directors and independent directors is a very important balance to strike. As is only having one founder on the management team. And I've been really surprised in our work at Bolster, where we're doing a ton of board searches for private venture-backed companies at all sizes and stages. The number of companies where the board is nothing but founders and VCs, even as they get into like Series C and Series D. And the reality is it's just not healthy. Independent directors bring a very, very different perspective to the business than either a professional investor, even if that investor had been an operator in a prior life. And certainly a different perspective from management or from founders. So I've been trying to with our client base to sort of evangelize this rule of ones. I think independence from day one can make a ton of sense, and balancing out investors as well. And you can have lots of different kinds of operators on your board as you add independent seats too. So to Padma's point, when you're larger and you're starting to think more about governance or going public, you'll need someone to chair an audit committee that checks a whole bunch of boxes that the SEC has out there for what constitutes an audit committee chair. But having someone who's a former CEO or a customer or a former or current executive at a larger company that you admire that's in your space or an adjacent space, whatever it is you're looking for, can really round out the discussion you have in a boardroom. So all those things that the board does at an early stage, help be a strategic sounding board, help you pattern match, help you see the forest and the trees at the same time, help call you out on bullshit, quite frankly, right? Those conversations go better when it's not just founders and VCs.
That's great. And that's a great segue to the last question I think we'll have time for, which is really managing a relationship with board members and founders. So Padma, I'll start with you. For the founders in the audience today, what's some of the best advice you could give for managing effective board relationships when you disagree on approach or even when you don't, just to really create healthy tension and healthy discussion?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think as Matt mentioned, you have to invest the time in building that relationship, right? Because board members are not someone you would see every day. It's a very different thing. When you're building your leadership team, you're together most of the time, and you're sort of like you're practicing together, you're training together, you're playing the game together. Board members come in maybe once a quarter, and so you have to invest the time to keep engaged, and the board member needs to invest their time, not just with the CEO, by the way. I think I would say board members have a responsibility to invest time to getting to know the CEO's leadership team and one level below. And so I think in a startup, choosing people who have the time to work with you as a board member. If you pick somebody who's a big name and has a lot of boards already, they may not have the time to invest in what you need. Like they need to be available to understand your business, to understand who your team is, get to know the team, point out to you, or debate with you who's a strong player on your team, who's not. It's sort of like that, again, that outside in perspective. That's super important. So I think building that relationship is important. Yeah, there will be disagreements. You will have disagreements as a founder or as a CEO of a large public company with the board. And I think that's healthy. The board is there to challenge you and to offer a different perspective from where you're at. I think if you are saying, these are my priorities, I can do A or B, which way should I go? The board member should have an opinion on A. And you may say, no, I think it should be B, and there should be a debate about that. I think what I find, and my advice, both to board members as well as people choosing the board members, is pick someone who's interested in your business. I think board members, if you're going to be a board member, you have to realize a lot of your free time is going to be taken away by preparing for board meetings, reading up on. So don't take a board whose business you're not interested in, because it's sort of like it's your time you're putting in. So you have to be excited about the business. So I think that's A for a board member. For people choosing the board member, I think looking at the person and making sure they have the right relevant experience and they have the time to invest to be an effective board member is key. Oftentimes, I find, I purposely choose only 2 boards, and then they're both pretty big boards and they take up a lot of my time because I know I can't afford to take any more time and be effective. And so that's super important. The second thing I would say is what Matt pointed out, building that ways for people to connect informally outside of the meeting, because the meeting is usually fairly structured. You have an agenda, you go through those topics, whether they're social, meeting each other for coffee or dinner or Zoom, where things are delivered, where perhaps there's no agenda and you just say, hey, I want to give you an update, and you sort of riff together, and the board member is there to literally be that sounding board. That's important. So making that as part of your regime, I think is just good hygiene. And the third thing is I find this very effective in both boards I'm in, is sending write-ups to your board on a regular basis. I do quarterly updates where it's more than just reporting the numbers, giving them a quick update on how the culture is coming, where do you think the challenges are, you're seeing new competitors. I find written is much more effective because you actually helps you organize your thoughts, and that way you're not asking for real-time time commitment from the board member as well, so they can read and ask questions to you when they have time. So I would do all 3, making sure you're educating the board member, taking some social time together, and then on the board member's part, investing the time to learn about the business and making sure you're picking boards whose businesses you truly are passionate about and are interested in.
That's great. That's such fantastic advice. I wish we had more time. The good news is that Matt has been gracious enough. Matt will be hosting a session in early August for our founders to dig in more on this topic, and both scaling yourself and scaling the business. So we'll get more opportunities to kind of hear from him. And I really encourage all the founders in our portfolio who are listening to please take some time to join us for that. We'll send out the comm shortly. Matt and Padma, thank you for this. This was incredibly interesting and edifying, and I really appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thank you,
Thanks
Matt.
for having us, Matt.
Matt, and Padma, thank you for that great session on the very important and different accent on responsibilities as an operator versus a board member, and developing your board, as Matt Blumberg noted, construct, manage, contribute, and lead, and of course the prerequisite passion and time that board members need to have before joining a board, as Padma noted. Whether you are a founder or an investor, storytelling is a key tool to inspire your team, explain decisions, and build a community of stakeholders. When we think of the foundational element of being human, our communities and cultures are undergirded by telling stories, so we can learn where we're from, who we are, and then where we're going, both individually and as communities. We are fortunate to have with us Alex Banayan, best-selling author of The Third Door, The Wild Quest to Uncover How the World's Most Successful People Launch Their Careers. Alex joins us to share his approach to effective storytelling.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Banayan, the author of the #1 international bestseller, The Third Door, and I am super stoked to be here with all of you for M13's Future Perfect. Shout out to Courtney and Carter and Alice and Christine for making all this possible. And hopefully I hope to see you all at a Future Perfect in person down the road, but right now that we're on virtual, I'm just stoked that I can be with all of you right now. So to give a bit of background, for the past 10 years, I've been obsessively studying success. I've spent thousands of hours researching, going through hundreds of biographies, and most importantly, sitting down one-on-one and asking questions to the people I was dying to get answers from. So for business, I interviewed Bill Gates, music, Lady Gaga, science, Jane Goodall, poetry, Maya Angelou, Steve Wozniak, Quincy Jones, Larry King, Jessica Alba, Pitbull. It's been this really exciting adventure filled with surprising lessons at every turn. And the reason I'm excited to be here with all of you at Future Perfect is particularly to focus on a part of this journey that I didn't even know was one of the most important parts of understanding success. And that has to do with storytelling. When I started off my journey, at the age of 18 to go track down the world's most successful people, it took me many, many years to realize that not only were some of the greatest, business icons we know phenomenal storytellers, but most importantly, that they weren't born that way. and that storytelling is a skill that you can hone, just like you can go to the gym and work on your bench press, you can work on your storytelling. And after 10 years of studying success, I learned a lot about storytelling, not only from my own writings of The Third Door, but also researching all these people. And one of the things that I do when I do different keynotes for companies is I just try to take all of these lessons from these 10 years and try to distill it in as simple of a way as possible. So when it comes to storytelling, I just want to, I know we don't have that much time together. We have, just about 10 minutes. What I want to do is just share a couple little things you can do to take any story. I don't care if it's a pitch to investors, a product launch, a marketing campaign, or even just communicating a story to your team. How you can make that story more emotionally compelling. Because it doesn't matter how good your product is or how much data you have to back it up. If you can't grab people's hearts, they're not listening. So this is what we're going to do. So imagine, and if any of you like to take notes, these are some things you can write down. Imagine you're in like a music recording booth, one of those music panels that music producers use with all these different knobs, hundreds of different knobs. My job right now for the next 10 minutes with you is to help identify the 5 knobs that if you move them just enough, it'll change the entire sound of your story. And these are the 5 knobs. I'm going to tell you them right now, so write them down, and then I'll dive in and give you a little bit of specifics on each knob. All right, so these are the 5 ones. And the acronym to remember it is VISTA, V-I-S-T-A. So I'll just give it to you right now so you can write it down, and then I'll explain it. So the first one, V, is vulnerable origin. So number 1 is vulnerable origin. That's the first knob. And then I, number 2, is intention. Number 3, V-I-S-S, is struggles and obstacles. Number 3 is struggles and obstacles. Number 4, T, transformation. And then number 5 is A, which stands for a message that matters. A message that matters. All right, so let's start off at number 1. Number 1 is V for vulnerable origin. I'll give you an example. Let's use an example of the best-selling book of all time. It's not The Third Door just yet. It's not Carter or Courtney's book just yet either. It's, of course, Harry Potter. Best-selling book of all time, outside of the Bible. And let me tell you 2 ways that Harry Potter could be described, and you tell me which way you think is what J.K. Rowling used to launch Harry Potter. So one way you can describe Harry Potter is that here is a story of the greatest wizard on earth who kills Voldemort and saves the wizarding world, becomes the greatest Quidditch player of all time, and, lives a life that he never could have imagined. That's option 1 of how to describe Harry Potter, which is a true factual way to describe that story. Here's option 2. This is the story of an orphan who lives under the staircase of his uncle and aunt's house, who's bullied, alone, and has no sense of belonging. And all that changes when a letter arrives through a window carried by an owl. Which description do you think J.K. Rowling chose to use in the back of the first Harry Potter book? Of course, it was the second. Because what the greatest storytellers in the world know is that the starting point of any story that grips the audience is by starting off with a vulnerable origin. And for your business, that might be the founding of why you started the business, or if it's even, let's say you're even doing a quarterly report to your investors, it's finding some vulnerability, whether it's in your team, in your marketplace, or even in your customers' lives, that you can ground your story in to pull people in. So your question for yourself is, how can I, strip away all of the important facts and actually go to the heart of the most vulnerable part of the origin? That's how you start the story. Now, the second one is intention. And the importance of intention is without it, the whole story falls apart. And an intention is literally the stakes of why the story matters. It's what, we all say, oh, the movie glued me to my chair. That's because the movie had a really strong intention. And again, we're moving through this fast, so what I'll just say here is your goal for yourself is to ask yourself, how can you turn up the heat, turn up the volume on the intention where it feels life and death? Now look, if you're doing a product launch, there's probably not a life or death reality, but you need to show the emotional stakes, the impact it'll have on the broader community, so you can get that intention turned up of why this matters. All right, S for struggles and obstacles. This is where the story feels like a story. Most people, especially in the business world, it's very natural, I do it too, want to just highlight all of the good things they're doing, all of the successes they've had, and that is the most boring thing you can possibly do. What you want to do is instead focus the camera on the places you struggled, where your team had faced obstacles the most, because that's when people get to the edge of their seat. It's by shining a spotlight on the struggles and obstacles. Now, number 4 is transformation. And that's where a story feels complete. We've all been to a movie where it has an amazing origin, an amazing intention, all of this action and love and struggles and obstacles, and then at the end we go, something was wrong at the end. What was always wrong is the transformation at the end was not intense enough. And what you want is to make sure that at the end of your story, where the main character, where the customer, whatever the main perspective is of your story is 180 degrees different from that vulnerable origin. So like Harry Potter, he was alone and lonely and an orphan, and by the end, he was in a sense of belonging. Harry Potter doesn't end with Harry putting his fist in the air. It's actually him with his best friends. You want that sense of transformation to be as extreme as possible. Now, the final one is a message that matters. And this is what takes a story, a product launch, an ad campaign, a pitch, from being a good story to a story that has legs, that people want to share on your behalf. And we all have seen that Think Different campaign with Steve Jobs, where he literally shows that by putting a larger message, a message about humanity, a message about why this matters to more than just your business, why this matters to our society. By tying your story up with a bow of a larger message that means something, that's where your story gets the longevity that will last for years. So again, I'm Alex Banayan, the author of The Third Door. Thank you to Carter and Courtney, to the whole team for having me at Future Perfect, and I hope you all have an amazing rest of the session. See you all soon.
Thank you, Alex, for the lively conversation. That was certainly a message that matters. Thank you to you and to all our panelists today for the actionable and impactful approaches that can be applied on both a small and large scale. Talk about vulnerability and intention in speaking your story. Alex has mastered one of the true secrets of storytelling, the pause. A friend who is a great public speaker told me one of the most effective ways to draw people's attention to what you're talking about is to take a breath. Did that work? Now we turn our attention to the effective partnership of influencers on brand building. My colleague, M13 partner Lizzie Francis, is joined by 2 longtime friends and collaborators, investors and entrepreneurs, Jeff Stibel and Brian Lee, who have different approaches to influencer partnerships and best practices for engaging with them to build brands. Jeff Stibel is a best-selling author, investor, and co-founder of Bryant Stibel. Brian Lee is the co-founder of BAM Ventures, LegalZoom.com, ShoeDazzle.com, and The Honest Company, the eco-friendly consumer goods company led by actress Jessica Alba. Happy to hand it over to you, Lizzie.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Brian and Jeff. Congratulations to you both on your most recent successes in the market. both of you with LegalZoom's IPO in June, and Brian on your recent IPO with Honest Company. Great wins for LA and just fantastic wins for you both. I think most people here today know about your backgrounds, and it's safe to say that you both have contributed to building some of today's most iconic brands as founders, operators, investors, authors. And I know that much of your success has come from being really at the forefront and innovative with your marketing strategies and practices. And I'd like to unleash your wisdom on our audience around what you've learned about building iconic brands through influencers and influencer marketing. So with that, Jeff, unleash your wisdom on us. What's your philosophy and approach to successfully and authentically leveraging influencers to help founders build brands and connect with customers?
Well, crap, Lizzie, you sort of overbuilt it. So I'll try to do it a little bit of justice, but I mean, interestingly, if you want to call it wisdom, with all things related to marketing and influence, is anything but wise. I mean, it's just natural intentions. For me, it's all about trying to create an organic experience. So knowing and understanding your customers, knowing what they want and what they need, trying to fit the product to that, and then match your messaging in a very organic and authentic way, which sometimes involves influencers because psychologically they can be very powerful if authentic. Sometimes not. So for me. I do not use influencers very often. So it's sparing both in the businesses that I have run, but also with businesses that we invest in. When we do, it's because there's a certain amount of authenticity. Their effort, their time, their experience carries the day. And the fact that they're influential is coincidental.
Yeah, Brian, and that's really thoughtful. I appreciate it. Brian, do you have a similar approach? Do you think that founders should be judicious in how they leverage influencers? And to Jeff's point, how important is authenticity in this journey for them?
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me? Because I'm in the basement right now. Okay. I'm at my son's Boy Scout camp, and I found a basement to do this call. So.
Brian, it sounds like you went up on the shuttle with Richard Branson, and he left you there. It actually looks like it too from the background.
I appreciate you always, Jeff. I'm gonna turn up the heat on my intentions. With the words of Alex Banayan. So I totally agree with Jeff. It really is about authenticity, building that natural relationship with the consumer. And it really, when we were talking about partnering with a celebrity or influencer, it really has to relate, right, to the end consumer. And you can't make the end consumer think twice about it. If the end consumer has to make an additional step or an additional connection to connect that influencer to whatever service or product that they're representing, then you've already lost, right? It has to be almost instant where you say, okay, I get it. Right, and so one example of that, I mean there's so many examples in it, but like take any of the big influencers today, the JoJo Siwas or the Charlie D'Amelio's or the James, whatever his name is, James, the guy who does all the makeup, James Charles, I'm sorry, and Mr. Beast. I mean, they all have very, very natural connections to whatever products that they're selling, right? And it doesn't take anyone who knows them, they already know, okay, I understand why Mr. Beast is selling burgers. I understand why James Charles is selling the makeup packages that he's selling, right? And so forth. So even if you don't have that connection immediately, you've got to build that to the point where it becomes natural. An example of that is The Honest Company. When we started The Honest Company, when I started with Jessica Alba, at the time we started, most of her followers were not young moms. They were a different audience. And so we had to really build that following with her to attract more and more of that modern mom, right? And we did that by reaching out to bloggers, having a lot of influencer events and so forth. And so when we launched into the marketplace, we had a tremendous followers of moms who understood her story, and it resonated with them quite naturally.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because really at the heart of what both of you are talking about is storytelling and connection, right? And finding someone who so authentically connects with the brand that the consumer feels that it's totally seamless. Brian, I read a great interview with you where you talked about how you feel like a lot of your investing and your career has actually followed your life. And so it's felt very authentic to you in your own life journey. I think for a lot of our founders, they're just starting. It's for many of them, their very first journey. And I wanted to know, as you now on the other side of the table, for you and Jeff, if they come to you, how important are these partnerships or influencer integration into their brands, either at an early stage or later stage? What's the advice that you would give them as an investor? And do you actually feel like it's table stakes in today's world for a brand to have someone who authentically represents the brand and can tell that story out in the wild?
No, I don't think so, Lizzie. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing of any business is the actual product, is the actual service, right? And the delivery of the promise of the brand to the consumer, right? And so long as you have a great product or a service and you're consistently delivering happiness or a great product or whatever it is to that end consumer, you have a very strong fighting chance to succeed. Now, in terms of working with an influencer or a celebrity partner and so forth, I wouldn't even call that table stakes. It could be there. It doesn't have to be there, quite honestly. Sometimes I meet entrepreneurs who have a product and they're like, I need a celebrity partner or an influencer partner. And sometimes I'll tell them, you don't really need it. I can't even think of an influencer or celebrity that naturally fits with this product or brand. Right. And so in those cases, you don't always need to do that. But I mean, you should be well versed in terms of marketing, of course. Right. And even if it's reaching out to some influencers to help market it and so forth and market on Instagram or TikTok and understanding the influencer space, absolutely, that is table stakes. But partnering with that one or small group of influencers or celebrity, I don't think that's necessary per se, depending on the product or service.
Yeah, and look, I would argue that every startup has a prepackaged influencer attached to it day one. That's the entrepreneur. And you shouldn't, you have failed if you think you need to find another influencer. As the entrepreneur, you should be the best person to convince your customers, your employees, your investors that they want and need and have to have whatever it is you're selling. If you can't do that and you need to rely on an influencer early on, you should go back to working at Starbucks. You'll be better off selling coffee, unless your startup is selling coffee, and then you've got a problem. But look, the reality is, if you feel like you need an influencer, there's nothing authentic about that. If you see a fit with someone who happens to be influential, then you should go after that individual as a partner. Otherwise, be your own influencer. The best way to learn about your market, learn about your customers, learn why people want or don't want your product. And do that before you bring an influencer in. I mean, I'd actually argue the opposite. Table stakes is not having an influencer, because if you have to constantly question early on whether you're selling something because a influencer is hawking it or because it actually provides a real service and real value to someone, you're ultimately going to do your business a disservice.
Brian, as a recovered lawyer, I think you'll appreciate this. My mother was a partner in a law firm, and I asked her once, what's the sort of number one skill you need as a lawyer? And she said, sales. You got to go out there and drum up business. And what you're both saying really resonates with me, which is it starts with the founder being comfortable in telling that story, particularly as it evolves over time. And so, Jeff, what you're saying really resonates around that beginning of the founder journey, often when maybe the story does start with coffee and then ends up being a car, right? And so it evolves over time, but at the core of it is something really true. As you all have looked at your careers and with the brands that you've worked with, who's done this really well? Or is there anyone out there in the marketplace where you feel like wow, the founder really was such a great influencer or brand builder for the brand. And then they did a really beautiful job integrating others' voices into it, right? So it felt, to your point, like a totally authentic relationship that had been built naturally. If you guys have any examples, we'd love for you to share it with our founders so they can really understand and hear about that.
I mean, I'm going to defer to Brian, because if someone's asking me when Brian isn't on a call or, or on screen, I usually say Brian Lee. He's done this over and over again, incredibly successfully, very organically, and continues to evolve and adapt the model so that when it grows stale, because everyone's copying Brian, he's already on to the next idea and in concept. So
that was a softball to Brian. It was just like a softball to Brian, right? Here we go. Brian, dabble up.
It is, but it's genuine.
You're embarrassing me, Jeff. But in terms of who I think is doing it well, there's so many that are doing it well. Quite honestly, it's like the one that really sticks out to me, truthfully, is Goop. And I know a lot of people have heard of Goop. I'm not going to create some new company that no one's heard of, but in Goop, what Gwyneth Paltrow has done there is honestly quite amazing. It's amazing that she has built her, preferences, what she loves and likes into this company that exists not just for her own brands, but for all the other brands that she's attaching to it in a very, very organic way. And I think Goop is here to stay. I think it's just an amazing job that I see an influencer having built. I think a lot of the TikTok influencers are really the future, as we all know, and what they're building in their own right for their own brands and their own business. I mentioned some of them before, but I went to Salt Bay's pop-up restaurant in Beverly Hills. I'm not sure if you know who Salt Bay is, but it's Nusr, that's N-U-S-R-E-T, and I think they have a pop-up restaurant still there, but he does this, he's a steak chef, basically. He makes these steaks and he pours the salt with his elbow, the whole thing. And just based on that influence and the viralness of his videos, he has built an empire of steakhouses around the world. And I've never seen anything quite like it. And this is all within a matter of 2 or 3 years. And it's pretty incredible that you can take that type of influence and parlay that into, again, an authentic dining experience and start dominating globally. Like it's not just, sometimes you meet these entrepreneurs and they really are a lot of them are provincial in thinking that the U.S. is their only market, when in actuality the world is larger, it's getting smaller and smaller through the advent of social media and so forth. So I think a lot of, this might sound like a cop-out, but so many that are doing it right today, and I'm just impressed every day. I think, anyway, I think Artist Sport's doing it great. I'll just plug in Artist Sport there for both of us.
Yes, well done. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I think what I hear you saying is listen to your intuition and wield influence as an effective tool, because to your point, there can be this tipping point moment for you where that really is what clicks with the consumer, and double down on it when it happens, because it can provide some tremendous insights and brand building. Jeff Stibel, Brian Lee, LA legends. If you don't follow them online, please do, because they are both marvelous to listen to. Thank you so much for your time and your insights today. At M13, we really appreciate you.
Great. Thank you, Lizzie. Real pleasure.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye. Safe travels, Jeff. Bye.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, Jeff, and Brian, especially for joining from your son's camp. If I took one thing away from that discussion, it's that the entrepreneur is the most important influencer. Brian emphasized the single most important thing that a company needs to provide is a great product or a great service consistently delivered. And Jeff's commentary about the power of authenticity and matching messaging in a natural way foots to that exactly. And now we turn to business leaders and social impact. Goldman Sachs made headlines for its $10 billion pledge to invest directly in Black women. But I'm always interested in the story behind the story, or in this case, the campaign and how it came to be. Today, we'll talk about the melding of a corporation keen on social progress and an all-female social impact campaign agency named HIVE, responsible for a campaign that spelled it out for Goldman Sachs stakeholders and the general public. I am very pleased to introduce my colleague, M13 Sequoia Blodgett, who will lead the conversation with Goldman Sachs launch. Suzanne Gauron launches Goldman Sachs' $500 million commitment to invest in diverse entrepreneurs and investors. And I'm also pleased to introduce HIVE co-founder and CEO, Jen Willig. Go ahead, Sequoia.
Hi, ladies. I'm so excited for this conversation. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that. Both of you ladies have very strong initiatives. Jen, yourself with LifePack under HIVE. Suzanne, you with 1 Million Black Women under Goldman Sachs. Before we dive deep into the conversation, I just want to create some color here. What do you feel is the difference between social impact and advocacy, i.e., building an actual company that has impact baked into the business model versus advocating or commenting on a belief that your organization stands for? Jennifer, we'll start with you.
Well, I do think there are differences. I think that sometimes you have to stand up on things that are happening around you and advocate on behalf of the people that you support, the communities that you serve, the areas where you're doing business. And with HIVE, we look at social impact as more around being able to model the company's mission around the business that you do. And I think it's a little bit different. We don't look at social impact as a campaign, even though we have campaigns around it. We look at it as a long-term commitment over time, because a lot of the social issues that we work on aren't going to be solved by a campaign. They're not going to be solved in 6 months even. So it really is looking at that kind of authentic commitment to be able to track metrics that, you know, sometimes take a long time to change: gender equality, the racial wealth gap, things like that.
Love that. Suzanne?
I totally agree with all of those comments. The way we really think about social impact is that there are systems that are not working as they should. And at Goldman Sachs, we are a large player in financial systems. And so we look at our core businesses and how we can use those core businesses and embed this work into them in ways that are based in data that we can gather and analyze, which is the work that we do for our clients, and then measurable over a long period of time. We'll talk about 1 million Black women, but that's a 10-year goal for us. We know this is a big problem. It's going to take long-term solutions, and we want to be part of that solution. But 10 years in our work will only get us part of the way there.
I so agree. And I just want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, because a lot of the times you hear social impact. How do you keep your organization from confusing social impact with philanthropic work? Like many times we'll hear, oh, we can volunteer, or maybe we can donate. How do you help them understand that, no, this is actually a cause that we can get behind that will yield actual metrics or economic gain? Or is that even criteria that's being considered when you guys make those decisions?
Well, I can jump in here, because I think both are important. You know, the check writing and philanthropy is really important as we go through. But, you know, I used to run an organization called RED to fight AIDS in Africa. And, you know, we used to always say you could go and ask for a check once, but you couldn't go and ask every year because of the nature of the problem. And so being able to create a sustainable flow of funding by creating a model that not only serves the issue that we're supporting, but also grows the business of the companies that are a part of it, we're critical. And I think it's absolutely critical as we go forward into kind of some of these very big intractable issues that we're focused on: climate change, you know, poverty, disease, et cetera.
Suzanne, what about yourself?
I think this has been a journey. I've been at Goldman for 20 years, and for a long time, we've had a great philanthropic commitment to communities that we work and live in. And employees expect that as part of coming to work every day at organizations that they commit their time to. You know, what we've seen over time is ways that we can also do this in our Today business, and that it's not black and white, it's not either or. So actually in 1 Million Black Women, one of the things that we're doing is we have investment that is philanthropic, we have investment that is concessionary, and we have investment that is market rate. And that's language that we use as a way of talking about the fact that there are different interventions that require different types of capital.
I so appreciate that. Suzanne, 1 Million Black Women is allocating $10 billion, I want to emphasize that, of direct investment into Black-led, female-founded businesses. Describe how you guys started and landed on this particular cause. I mean, there's so many causes that you could have went with. Why this one?
So I won't take you through the whole 20-year history, but we've really had an arc of working on identifying solutions around women and women's involvement in the workforce for many, many years now. And this goes back to very early research that was done by a key female leader at Goldman Sachs in Japan called Womenomics. And this was Kathy Matsui 20 years ago. And so we've had a variety of programs, some of which have been philanthropic, like our 10,000 Women program, which started 13 years ago. And so we feel that we're building on the learning and the interventions that we've done in the past, including a program I also work with called Launch with GS, which invests in Black, Latinx, and women-founded businesses. We had a moment in time last year with a reckoning around social justice where we took a lot of that learning and we said, what can we do to focus the efforts of Goldman Sachs on the issues that we see as so profound in our communities in the United States? And there were the voices of very important female Black leaders at Goldman Sachs who identified through this work that Black women were one of the most underserved communities and a linchpin in the United States that is not recognized and not given their due. And so from that understanding, we came to this idea of a large scale, long-term program with those three elements of concessionary, philanthropic, and market rate capital to address the key milestones in women's lives. And I think that that's something that everyone at Goldman and everyone we talk to connects with in a very profound way, which is there are these very special moments, whether it's giving birth, attaining education, attaining a job, that are hopeful for a lot of us. And unfortunately, those are often steps aside or steps back in inequality for Black women. And so we identified those 7 points in life that we could intervene in, including housing, capital, wages, healthcare, which is an area we know that Black women are deeply underserved in. And now we have this flexible capital. And so it's very creative. It's really energized the organization. And we're partnering with great organizations around the country to do this work because we know we can't do it alone and we for sure don't have all the answers ourselves.
As a former female founder, I so appreciate all that you just said. Thank you for that. So sometimes we get founders who can't choose what they want to focus on. And so they end up boiling the ocean. So their target demographic doesn't know what to do or what to support, which results in a failed campaign or a lack of momentum. So Jen, I played LifePack, the game, and the data was super eye-opening, informative, and a little alarming, to be honest. Why is it so important that founders focus on one particular cause and they focus on their why?
Well, I think they're kind of, the main one is authenticity. I think that, you know, we have consumers and the public are smarter than we give them credit for. They're super cynical. And I think that, you know, if you kind of do too many things in too many places, people really don't know what you stand for. I will say that it's not always a one and done. You know, I'll give you an example. We used to work with Getty Images, and in the early days, we were talking to them around, you know, aligning around social issues. And the leader of the company at the time was very committed to kind of two different issues that he wanted to talk about. But this was at the time of the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals. And, you know, we did a big analysis and looking at the company themselves. You know, Getty has photographers on the front line of literally every social issue because of where they're located. And it wasn't really, we actually recommended they not choose one issue, but really be the first, one of the founding partners of the Sustainable Development Goals, to be able to incorporate the business that they do and able to move missions forward and being able to achieve the SDGs by 2030. So that is an example of kind of how you really, I think it's more about looking at the company and the business that you're in, aligning that with the morals and the vision and the values that you have, and what is going to resonate most with your customer. Because we don't want to forget, I think social impact is not about forgetting that we're in business. It is about being able to make impact on the issues you care about through the business that you're in.
I so agree. When it comes to data, what, like you said, obviously this is not a philanthropic effort. What are your key stakeholders looking for in terms of metrics to say, hey, this was a successful campaign for us?
Yeah. Well, with LifePack in particular, so, you know, LifePack is working with the video game industry to unite them to help us end childhood malnutrition. 50 million kids right now are at risk of dying of severe malnutrition. And what we found when we did our research was that Gen Z it has kind of activism at the heart of who they are, and that poverty and hunger were really far up on that, high up on 1 and 2 on the issues that they care about globally. So when we talk to our video game partners that we have on board, we just launched with Tilting Point's SpongeBob Krusty Cook-Off, and you know, it was really being able to, one, the difference with malnutrition from some of the other issues is it's extremely quantifiable. And sometimes that's really hard in social impact. It's really hard to quantify impact. But with malnutrition, treatment is 25 cents for a packet of RUTFs, which is ready to use therapeutic food. 75 cents a day for 6 to 8 weeks can literally bring a child back from the brink of death. When you think about video games and scoring and points and battle and competition, having that kind of metric there to show how much money has been raised in a particular point of time by a particular person is really motivating. People want to be a part of something that is successful. So, you know, when we launched LifePack, we launched it with that challenge of the game, which is, I think, very hard, but we wanted to get 10,000 plays of that day of the game in order to raise 10,000 days of food. And that kind of competition and that kind of metric really galvanized the industry around us to be able to show this is the impact we're having. You know, unlike Goldman Sachs, not everyone can kind of come out with a financial commitment and say, we have $10 billion, but they can say, we are going to garner, you know, really bring together our community and raise 10,000 days of food or 1 million days of food, or we're going to serve, you know, 1 million children. So I think it's those metrics that we really look at when we look at social impact, along with, you know, increased engagement, loyalty, new users, that kind of stuff.
I love the gamification behind it. I felt like I was playing Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do I keep dying? But yeah, no, but it was extremely impactful. And every time, like, I would get to a certain point and the messaging that came up, it really resonated. Suzanne, what about yourself? How do you all quantify impact?
So we really are about the numbers as well. And we put them right in the title of our program. So 1 million Black women, the goal is to reach and impact the lives of 1 million Black women over this 10-year period. But we know that that's a big holistic goal that includes founders of companies that we're going to back, the employees of those companies if they're disproportionately Black women, and the consumers of the products and services that companies in these areas will deliver. And so, you know, there's a ton of different examples. There's one example we're really excited about right now of a company that's founded by a Black woman that does certifications for home healthcare aides who are disproportionately Black women. And with increased certification, you can increase your income and your job opportunities. And so that's an example where all the consumers of that company would be beneficiaries of what we're doing. But the second thing that goes without saying is also the investment returns of the investments that we're making. But in any circumstance, you know, we measure the philanthropic returns in the same way that we would measure our for-profit investment returns. And we expect to be very public about this because our capital is important, but one of the things that we hear, to Jen's point on data, when we talk to other organizations about why we believe that investing in diverse founders and diverse communities is a good idea, you get the answer back, well, is there any data on that? Which I find incredibly confounding, because you often present more data and it's viewed as tangential or academic. But we view this as, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We believe that this is a good investment, and we're producing data that will say that we have made good returns, and others should do the same. And then also, personally, we just want to also tell the stories of these great founders. And if you keep telling stories of great founders, and those founders look in very different ways and have come through very different journeys, our hope is that we can address some of the bias of why people see visionary founders in their head as white men.
I'm excited for it all. So we're at Future Perfect. Influencers are all the rage at the moment. And we want to know, how do you, with both of your organizations, how do you focus on authenticity? Because we, of course, have seen this shift from traditional media to now social media and influencer marketing. So with your organizations, how does authenticity come into play?
Suzanne, do you
Sure. I mean, I'm on this journey too. I've been in the corporate world from a time when, you weren't supposed to say who you worked for on LinkedIn, to now we live in a very different world. I think for me personally, a big part of authenticity is bringing your whole self to work and being able to share that internally and externally. And so when you look around Goldman Sachs at the leaders of initiatives like Launch with GS and 1 Million Black Women, this connects to their personal lives, personal missions, and personal experiences, as well as their professional lives. And that's a very important part of that. But I would also say, it doesn't have to be only the women, the Black women doing this work. Our CEO, David Solomon, has been essential in leading the charge, and he has a personal commitment to this. So it doesn't require segmenting people into different groups, but it requires that people understand that this is a personal as well as professional commitment of the leadership of the firm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, because of the nature of the organizations that we work with, and sometimes social impact doesn't always have the biggest budgets, influencers and influence is absolutely a critical piece for us to break through. And I have been lucky enough for, in my pivot from advertising into social impact, having run the Red organization and seeing one of the most successful influencers in Bono, really become a student of the, he is a student of the issue. He knows about poverty and HIV/AIDS better than any expert, I think. And it really kind of sets a precedent for how you want to recruit influencers to help speak on behalf of the company or the issue or the people that you are representing. So, I'll give an example. We work with the Gates Foundation on a project that is led by our Kenyan team, our HIVE Kenyan team, called Better for Kenya, which is a focus of making sure that gender issues and gender-based violence issues remain on the agendas of policymakers throughout Kenya. And it is an influencer campaign. We have some of the most incredible people, Janet Mbugua, who is a media personality, King Kaka, who is one of the largest rappers across the continent, speaking on behalf of gender issues to really rally the public and make sure that these issues stay top of mind. And it is their authenticity and commitment and education around the issue that really helps to bring this to life. And we launched it about 3 years ago, and just to see the vibrancy and the awareness, not only from the public, but of policymakers. Janet just moderated a group at the Generation Equality Forum last week. It is really, there's no media budget that could actually compete with that. It is really, when you have an influencer, whether that be somebody like Janet or a CEO like David, having worked with Goldman Sachs on some of the strategic work on it, or people at one.org who are, the CEO of our client One. She has been seconded by the White House to lead pandemic response. Those kinds of things are not, influence is not just about celebrity, but it is about being able to authentically show the urgency of these issues, because sometimes people don't realize how urgent these issues are because we've been living with them for so long. And it's that voice or voices that can really help to make people sit up and break through and cut through and pay attention.
Thank you, ladies. Such powerful answers. If one of our amazing audience members wanted to connect with your organizations, how would they go about doing that?
So on our website for 1 Million Black Women, as well as Launch with GS, we have contact information, and you can send an email, which appears to go into the void, but actually our teams read it and respond very quickly.
And for us, our website is ahive.com, but you can reach me directly at jennifer@ahive.com. Jennifer with one N though.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sequoia, Suzanne, and Jen. There's that word authenticity again. Putting together 2 points from Suzanne and Jen: big problems take long-term solutions and need a sustainable flow of funding and data and measurement. This applies to social impact, of course, but also aligns exactly with M13 and our mission as a value-added partner investor. And a quick plug, M13 believes strongly in ESG and DE&I. It's core to our ethos, and I'd encourage you to see our website for our ESG policy and how we integrate impact into everything we do. We have a very special conversation to end this season's Future Perfect. Crypto and the Creator can only be led by 2 special members of the M13 constellation: Elizabeth Stark, CEO and co-founder of Lightning Labs, and Paris Hilton, chairwoman and CEO at Paris Hilton Entertainment. Elizabeth co-founded Lightning Labs, a company building a second layer protocol which operates on top of the blockchain and aims to make transactions more efficient to enable scalability. At M13, we are very proud to partner with Elizabeth as an investor in Lightning Labs. Paris has built a global empire as an influencer, DJ, designer, recording artist, philanthropist, host, actress, model, and author. In 2006, she created Paris Hilton Entertainment, a multi-billion-dollar company consisting of 45 branded stores and 19 product lines, which have surpassed over $4 billion in revenue. And talk about influence, Paris's top-performing celebrity-branded hashtag on TikTok gathered over 3.3 billion views in 2 weeks. My colleague, Latif Paracha, M13 partner, will moderate the conversation. Latif, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Paris. Great to be here with you both. It's a very exciting panel for me and for the firm because we've had a thesis in crypto, we've had a thesis in the creator economy, and it is really exciting to see these worlds really starting to converge. So let's just get into it. Elizabeth, we'll start with you. Give us a little background on Lightning and what attracted you to the Lightning Network, and we'll take it from there.
Well, yeah, it's really exciting to be here. Thanks so much for having us. So I've always loved music and the creator economy. In fact, Latif, when you and I first met, we bonded over our mutual love of electronic music, DJs and whatnot. And I'd always wondered, why wasn't there—
By the way, Paris and I also bonded over that separately.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, we all can bond around these issues. So I'd always wondered, why isn't there an easy way on the internet to say, pay a musician, a DJ, a videographer, creator money globally, anywhere around the world, natively? Why are there all these intermediaries, middlemen, that take massive cuts? If you're international and you're not, say, here in the US, why is it so difficult to transact? Like if I have a musician that I like, why can't I just send them 50 cents or $1 easily on the internet natively? So that was something that I had thought about kind of before the world of Bitcoin. And when I first discovered Bitcoin, to me, it was eye-opening and thinking, oh, wow, we can finally have this native way to transact on the internet and enable creators to make money, to engage with fans, to have their community without these intermediaries, middlemen that take these massive cuts. So that's actually what got me excited about Bitcoin in the early days. And then I wondered, okay, Bitcoin at its base layer has 10-minute transactions. The fees can spike up. If you want to send smaller values, how do we do that? Well, lo and behold, the technology that we're working on, Lightning, enables instant transactions with very low fees. Very scalable. You can do many thousands of transactions per second. And this is an ideal way to actually enable this new creator economy. So in fact, my love of music and my interest in enabling this native transaction layer over the internet is what actually got me to work on this in the first place. One thing I like to think about is with photos, right? today it's really easy to send a photo on the internet to anybody, in any application. Imagine if in order to send a photo to India or Argentina, you had to wait days and use a different format. That's how value and money on the internet works today. And that does not work for creators in that there's so many barriers and so many intermediaries. So the goal with Lightning is to really have this native transaction layer to make it as easy as sending a photo as it is to send value on the internet and to empower creators to do so.
That's great. And we see all that development activity firsthand as investors. So great to see that. Paris, maybe you can talk a little bit about your personal journey with crypto. Not many people probably know that you've been in the market for many years, and then
you're an OG.
You're an OG for sure. And so and maybe talk a little bit about your recent interest in NFTs and how all that is going for you.
Well, it's so good to be here today with the M13 family. And this is such an exciting conversation. I've been involved in the crypto world since around 2016. I became friends with and had dinner with the founders of Ethereum, and I was just fascinated what they were telling me about this and really saw it as the future. And then back in March of 2020, I was approached to do a charity initiative and do my first NFT. And we launched that 100% for charity. And I just saw really this new exciting way to release art. And I've always loved digital art. And I love that it really gives the power back to the creator. Because even, in the traditional art world, it was all about being able to get into that, exhibit that was happening or work at that art dealer. And then after you would sell something, you would never see anything in the secondary market. And now with this technology, these artists will be receiving what they deserve for the rest of time. And I just think that's so amazing with the blockchain and everything that's happening, that this power is really going to the creator, who deserves it, because they're the ones who are creating these.
Yeah, I mean, that is that the business model innovation that is enabled by the blockchain is something that I don't think gets enough attention when people talk about NFTs, and I think we can only start to really understand some of the implications. And then what's also really cool, Paris, is that you are across mediums, and so there's obviously the kind of art as we know it, and then there's also music, and we've seen some really interesting things happening there. Do you foresee yourself potentially expanding your NFT strategy beyond just the more traditional digital art?
Definitely. I was so proud with my first drop with Blake Catherine that we had the highest selling female comp in history. So that was amazing. Just breaking the ceiling for women in the industry and women creators. And there's so much more to do. I'm working on my next drop right now. The first one was focused on art, but I do so many things. So the next ones are going to be more involved in the fashion world and also music. So I just feel with this, really the possibilities are endless and there's so many things to do. This is just the beginning. And I just can't wait to continue doing this and really just be a voice and use my platform to spread this all around the world.
That's great. Elizabeth, why don't we talk a little bit more about some of the more interesting things you're seeing on Lightning that's happening. Clearly, we've seen stuff of the government of El Salvador. That's not really in the creator economy, but just tremendously impactful. Anything on the creator side that you're seeing that's really interesting that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen is an explosion of creativity lately, which has been incredible. So the goal with Lightning is to make it really easy for anybody to build on Bitcoin and build this native value layer on the internet. And for example, a good friend of ours, Crypto Graffiti, who's also a house DJ, Paris, I know you're a DJ, and my future career is hopefully also a DJ, which I often say to my DJ friends, and I'm like, I have a startup. He did this very cool experiment where he had a DJ set in front of the Mint in San Francisco, and they were streaming Lightning payments, and they were actually split. So you were able to split it amongst the producer of the track and then the DJ. So we have these new models for monetization, compensation of artists and creators. So definitely check out Crypto Graffiti's work around split payments there. There's also this concept of streaming sats, as we call it. So Satoshis are the lowest denomination of Bitcoin, 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, currently about 0.03 of a cent. It's gone way up in the last couple of years. And the community is getting really interested in this idea of being able to stream payments to creators. So there's some great things going on in the podcasting world. Adam Curry, the podfather, the father of podcasting, has spearheaded a lot of very cool initiatives around podcasts. We've seen Twitch streaming. A community member named Fitty Boy created a Lightning Twitch plugin that goes into OBS, which is the software used to stream on Twitch. So people can stream payments that way. There's a group called Lightning Store that's done interesting things around streaming sats and music. The video game community is currently blowing up. Zebedee, Satoshi's Games, we saw Donner Lab, we saw at Bitcoin 2021, over 50,000 transactions over 2 days in gaming tournaments. So really, the possibilities here for the creator economy are both endless and just getting started. Oh, Scarce.city is doing Lightning-based auctions. They have both physical art where people are bidding over Lightning, and I know they're very interested in NFTs on Bitcoin as well. So what we've really just seen is from all sides, people are building these new use cases to enable creators to have new models. And then one other area that I'm very interested in is engaging community, engaging fan bases. One of our friends, Justin Razvani of N2N2, is building an app where you can actually have a Lightning app on your phone and connect with creators, both as a fan, and then the creators connect back and they're able to transact and send messages over the Lightning network. And then of course, cannot forget Sphinx.chat, the very cool application where you send and receive chat messages over Lightning and you can natively embed payments. And a lot of podcasters and creators are now using this technology to actually embed sats when they're connecting with their fan bases and chatting. So I actually think we're at the beginning of new and evolving models to connect with fan bases using Bitcoin and Lightning, which I'm really excited about. And we'll see in a couple of years.
Sounds like you might need to get your podcast into this.
I know.
We'll help make it happen. And I'll DJ soon, hopefully.
Definitely.
One of the things I've been really excited by on the music side is this idea that, artists have been basically forced to go on tour because that's the only way that they can make money and put food on the table. And the idea that you can have these NFTs, these really unique collections that you can have patrons that can pay you a significant amount of money, but for that, you can give away a bunch of other stuff for free. You can decide to tour when you want, not when you have to. And so I think the economic empowerment element is really exciting. And so we'll see what happens there. Paris, what can we expect from you in terms of, social tokens? Is there going to be a Paris token at some point we can all participate in? I mean, I know you're always ahead of the curve, so.
Yes, we've actually been discussing that for a while now, so you'll be seeing that very soon. And I think that's just such a new and exciting thing as well. And I love being able to do that for my fans. And also with NFTs, offer experiences and really, just be there for my fans in so many different ways that wasn't possible before. So it's very exciting. And I'm also curating an all-female art exhibit on 7 Grant Foundation. And it's called Empowered by Paris, Empowered Women, Empower Women. And it's just been incredible just seeing all of these really incredible female artists submitting their work. And now I've just been curating and looking through just hundreds and hundreds of them. So soon I will have the art exhibit up.
Great, that's great to hear. We've got a few more minutes. I'd love to talk a little bit about, it's really exciting what's happening in the NFT market and in Bitcoin and in the creator economy. But what is it going to take from where we are today, which is still, kind of an experiment, although I did see that 4 million Americans have bought an NFT, which is remarkable. I think and most of them happened in the last 6 months. If you think about it, there's roughly 40 million Americans that own Bitcoin, and that's been over a 10-year span. So the acceleration of adoption is happening very quickly, but we're still early days. So Elizabeth, maybe you can talk a little bit about what's it going to take in order to open up more applications to consumers. It's still crypto is still this kind of tough to understand, crazy thing. People like Paris are obviously making a huge contribution in terms of opening up access, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about about what we need to do to increase?
Yeah, I mean, it's still early days. And I know people say, oh, well, it was early days a couple of years ago. But if you think about the evolution of the internet, right, 1969 was the first, was the birth of the internet, actually, the ARPANET. And it wasn't until the 90s that it even really got mainstream with the invention of the World Wide Web. So in the early days, you know, with Bitcoin, especially crypto, you had the concept of the asset. People invested, you know, Paris, I know you were buying Bitcoin and ETH back then. And that's interesting. And there are a lot of use cases there, store value, people in economies with hyperinflation or where governments might confiscate things, human rights implications. My good friend Alex Banayan over at the Human Rights Foundation is working with a lot of activists. But to me, that's only the beginning and the first part. And the idea of being able to have this value network, monetary network, where you can transact and natively embed value on the internet is so exciting. And that's really, to me, where the creator economy starts blowing up. So the creators of the web, Tim Berners-Lee in the early 90s, they actually envisioned that you would be able to transact on the internet natively. People may have heard of 404, the error code not found. There was actually a 402, there still is, payment required for the web. So back then, the idea was you were going to be able to have this native way to transact, but the technology just wasn't there yet. So fast forward to today, we've seen the evolution, you know, 2009, the Bitcoin network launches. That was Bitcoin, the asset. Then we move forward with what we're doing with Lightning Network. You know, we have Bitcoin, the monetary network, and the ability to natively have these transactions. And we're several years in. 2018 was really the first mainnet version of what we're doing with Lightning, the layer 2, the scalable transaction layer. But again, equivalent to the early days of the internet. So we've seen now hundreds of applications building on this technology. I know in a variety of other spaces around NFTs, it's just early. Like there are, the 4 million stat is interesting, but in many cases, people are likely using applications that might be, they're using credit cards, or there may be ways in which it's quote unquote custodial, and there are risks around that. So I think we need to get to a point where things are more usable. Usability is a key part here to make it easy, make it more accessible. And that's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. Branching up access in terms of the global emerging markets, really getting people of all walks of life on board to this technology is key. And just really evolving the technology to make it so that it's solving real problems and both helping creators and helping the broader population.
Great. Paris, anything to close off on? Any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
Just, I'm so excited to be with you guys here today, and I'm going to continue just spreading the word around. And yeah, I just wanted to send my love to the whole community. I've met some of those brilliant and creative and kind and just amazing people in this community, and have made so many friends. So I'm just really grateful to have met everyone, and I'm excited for the future of this.
Well, it's a real treat to be on this digital meeting with you both, and keep doing what you're doing. I think the big takeaway for me is we need to have a crypto and the creator music festival or something, right?
And I'll DJ, but Paris, also you're so hooked into the community. I love it. You know, on Discord, engaging with people, Clubhouse, Twitter. And that's really what this is all about. It's about community, and it's about building those bonds and relations. And to me, that's what makes you a true OG. So thanks for being involved.
OGs, thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Latif, Elizabeth, and Paris. That discussion was a perfect bookend, and it tied up so well our conversations today on the power of the creator. As Paris noted, the power of the entrepreneur, the power of authenticity and positive impact to ultimately, as Elizabeth noted, engage community and solve real problems. I'd encourage everyone to share your feedback about Future Perfect in our form, which we'll add into the chat box. In the spirit of continuous improvement here at M13, we will take both your positive diamonds or honest spades in the pursuit of improvement. I have to thank my colleague, M13 partner Christine Choi, who knows a thing or two about influence herself, for that delightful and colorful language, diamonds and spades. But seriously, we welcome your feedback. For everyone who has joined us, thank you. We are so grateful to our panelists and our audience's time. for your time and participation. Just remember, as I always say, these are not conversations in isolation. We are living and breathing these topics every day alongside you, our portfolio founding teams, and our incredible ecosystem of investors, advisors, and friends. This is absolutely an iterative conversation, and we hope to have many, many more discussions like this with you in the future. To learn more about the work we're doing in these areas, you can visit our website at m13.co, that's m13.co, or email us at investors@m13.co. We have and will continue to host additional events in the future and would love your unvarnished feedback, those diamonds and spades, to help us make these conversations as relevant as possible to you. Please be on the lookout for a survey in your inbox later today. It should take moments to fill out and is invaluable to us. Talk about influence. Until the next time we convene, on behalf of everyone at M13, we send our very best wishes that you and your families and friends have a lovely summer and all stay safe and in good health. And again, on behalf of M13, thank you for joining us.